John Parker stood in the small living room of his home, staring at the packed boxes stacked neatly against the wall. His deployment orders lay on the table, the ink still fresh, like a stamp of destiny he could not avoid. He had trained for this moment for years. Serving his country was his dream, his pride. But as he looked around, he felt a strange mix of excitement and unease. Leaving home was always hard, but leaving everything he owned behind was even harder. The house looked normal. The lawn was green, the mailbox was shiny, and the neighbors waved as he walked out to the driveway. But John did not notice the subtle glances, the whispered conversations as he drove away. He was focused on the mission ahead. The letters from the HOA, few and seemingly minor, had been buried under piles of official military paperwork. A couple of fines, he had told himself, nothing serious. His wife, Emily, hugged him tightly. She was brave on the outside, but her eyes betrayed worry. "You'll be back soon," she said softly. "Everything will be fine." John nodded, forcing a smile. He wanted to believe it, wanted to leave with a light heart. But deep down, he felt a tiny twinge of unease. The plane ride was long and quiet. Soldiers around him chatted in low voices, some joking, some tense. John tried to focus on the future missions, the drills, the camaraderie. Yet, his thoughts kept drifting home. What if the HOA became more than a small annoyance? He shook his head. "I'm overthinking," he muttered. "Just focus on the deployment." Weeks passed. Letters from home came in bursts, mostly postcards from Emily, with pictures of the garden and their dog, Max, playing in the yard. John smiled at each one, feeling a warm connection to the life he had left behind. But one letter caught his attention. It was from the HOA. The envelope was plain, official, almost cold. John opened it carefully. The words seemed small, harmless, almost bureaucratic. Notice of violation, property standards. He frowned, reading the lines again and again. They complained about minor landscaping issues, a fence slightly offline, a mailbox that did not meet regulations. John's brow furrowed. He knew Emily would handle it, but something about the tone made his stomach twist. It was not just the words. It was the way the letter implied urgency, a hidden threat lurking beneath the polite formality. John could almost feel the HOA watching, waiting. But he shoved the thought aside. Emily will take care of it. That's what she's good at, he reassured himself. Deployment was tough. Days were long, nights were longer. The desert sun burned during the day, and the cold nights cut through the thin blankets. John threw himself into his duties, knowing that distraction was dangerous. Yet, his mind wandered back to home, to the mailbox, the lawn, the quiet streets. One evening, under a sky painted with stars, John called Emily. Her voice was calm, even cheerful. "Everything is fine, John. Don't worry about the house. The HOA, they are just nagging as usual." John tried to relax, tried to believe her words. But in the back of his mind, a shadow lingered. The HOA. He could not shake the feeling that their letters carried more than complaints, they carried a threat. Days turned into weeks. Each letter from home was scanned carefully before being handed to him. John noticed subtle changes in the tone of the letters. Emily mentioned small things, neighbors acting strangely, a few friends avoiding eye contact. She tried to sound casual, but John sensed tension. The worst night came quietly. John was lying on the cold floor of the barracks, reading a letter under the dim light. Emily wrote that she had tried to pay the fines, that she had called the HOA, and that they were being difficult. Too difficult. There were words like "we cannot comply" and "legal action may be necessary." John's heart sank. He could feel a storm brewing back home, a storm he was too far to control. John could not sleep that night. He stared at the ceiling, thinking about everything he had fought for, everything he had left behind. The HOA seemed like a small, petty thing, but in his heart, he knew it was not small at all. Sometimes, the quietest dangers were the most dangerous. The next morning, John tried to distract himself with training exercises. He ran drills, cleaned weapons, and checked equipment, but every push-up, every drill, felt heavy. His mind kept drifting home. He imagined the HOA sending letters, making demands, and taking control while he could do nothing. The fear grew, but he buried it under layers of duty and pride. A week later, another letter arrived, this time marked important legal notice. John opened it with trembling hands. The words hit him like a punch. The HOA was not just asking for fines, they were claiming rights over part of his property. Small sections at first, then larger areas, in a confusing legal language. John read and reread, his chest tightening. He could barely believe it. Could a homeowners association really try to take property while he was serving his country? He wrote a long email to Emily, asking for details, trying to understand what was happening. Her reply came the next day, but it was cryptic. "I'm trying to handle it, John. Don't worry. I hope you trust me." She added a small heart emoji at the end, trying to calm him. But John's worry was growing, eating at him slowly like a quiet fire. John realized something terrifying: he had no control. He was thousands of miles away, fighting for his country, while the people he trusted to protect his home might not be able to stop a slow, creeping injustice. He tried to push it out of his mind, but each letter, each phone call, each small report from Emily felt like a puzzle piece of a bigger, darker picture. By the end of the month, John's fear had turned into a quiet resolve. He would not let the HOA take his home. He did not yet know how, but he promised himself he would fight. The seed of determination was planted, deep in his heart, even as he walked across the sun-baked desert, rifle in hand, duty on his mind. But little did John know, the HOA was already moving faster than he could imagine. While he served his country with honor, their plans were not small, petty tricks, they were calculated, precise, and growing bolder each day. What seemed like minor fines and polite notices was only the beginning. And somewhere deep in the night, as John slept in his distant barracks, a storm began to take shape back home, a storm that would not just challenge his family, but the entire neighborhood. The sun was setting over the small suburban neighborhood, painting the streets in shades of gold and orange. Emily Parker stepped out onto the porch, holding a stack of letters. She had learned to recognize the HOA's handwriting, its neat, official loops and sharp lines. Her heart sank. Another letter. But this one, something felt different. It was not the usual warning about a fence, mailbox, or tiny patch of lawn. The envelope was thicker, heavier, almost like it carried a secret. Emily turned it over in her hands, reading the return address again. "Why does it feel urgent?" she whispered to herself. Inside was a notice titled, "Immediate Action Required, Property Compliance Review." The words were simple, but the tone was sharp, almost threatening. The letter said that certain areas of their yard, even parts of the driveway, were non-compliant with HOA rules. Emily frowned. She had tried to follow every rule perfectly. This didn't make sense. She tried calling a neighbor for advice, but no one answered. Odd. Usually, people were chatting, mowing lawns, or waving hello. Today, the streets were unnervingly quiet. Only a few children played, their laughter distant and soft. Emily felt a chill. Something was off. Inside the house, the phone rang. Emily's hand shook as she picked it up. The voice on the other end was soft but unnerving. "We are reviewing your property," it said. No name, no greeting, just a mechanical warning. Then the line went dead. Emily stared at the receiver, heart racing. Who calls like that? The HOA? It didn't sound like them, or anyone human. Emily walked slowly around the yard, checking fences, the mailbox, even the tiny garden gnomes John had placed last summer. Everything seemed normal, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. From the corner of her eye, she thought she saw a shadow moving across the neighbor's yard. She turned, but no one was there. Days passed, and the letters kept coming. Emily tried to ignore them at first, thinking maybe it was just paperwork, mistakes, or someone overreacting. But then, strange things started happening. Packages she hadn't ordered appeared on the porch, sometimes broken, sometimes empty. Lights flickered in the house at odd times. The security camera she had installed showed nothing unusual, until late at night, when a faint figure seemed to linger near the driveway. Emily's worry grew, but she had to stay calm. John was deployed. He was thousands of miles away, and she had promised him she would handle things. Yet, the HOA's actions were no longer small fines or polite threats, they were moving like predators circling slowly, quietly. One evening, Emily received an email from the HOA, marked urgent. She opened it with trembling hands. The words were simple, but the meaning was terrifying. Your property boundaries are under review. Unauthorized areas will be claimed. She read it again. Claimed? Her stomach twisted. How could a homeowners association claim parts of her home? This was impossible. She tried to call the HOA office, but the line was always busy. Every message she left went unanswered. Meanwhile, neighbors who had once waved and smiled now avoided eye contact. Some even moved out quickly, leaving their homes empty. Emily couldn't understand why. Was it the HOA? Or something else? Emily decided to document everything. She took photos of the lawn, the fences, and the mailbox. Every letter, every email, every strange call was saved. But even with proof, the situation felt like quicksand. The HOA seemed untouchable. Then, one night, the strangest thing happened. Emily was checking the backyard when she noticed footprints in the soil, fresh, perfectly shaped, leading from the street to the property line. She froze. They were too large to be animals, too human to ignore. They stopped at the fence. She held her breath. Could someone have come onto the property? Who? And why? The next morning, she told the neighbors about the footprints. One neighbor, Mr. Thompson, leaned over cautiously. You saw that too? He whispered. Emily nodded. He shook his head. It's not just you. Something is happening here. The HOA, they aren't like other associations. Be careful. Emily didn't know what to say. She wanted to scream, to call John, to fight back, but she felt trapped. The HOA letters kept arriving, each one sharper than the last. Immediate action required. Non-compliant areas will be removed. Legal consequences pending. She tried to pay the fines, thinking it might stop the letters. But the HOA refused to accept payment. Every attempt was denied. Every phone call unanswered. Emily felt herself being pushed into a corner. She realized the HOA wasn't just bureaucratic, they were dangerous. Her fear grew stronger when she noticed small changes around the neighborhood. A for sale sign appeared in front of an empty house, but it didn't belong to a real estate company. Some neighbors quietly moved out overnight. Windows that used to have curtains now stared blankly, like eyes watching the street. Emily began to suspect that the HOA was not just enforcing rules, they were taking over, one house at a time. She couldn't explain why, but the pattern was clear. And with John away, she felt powerless. Then, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. Her dog, Max, barked furiously at the edge of the yard. Emily looked over and saw a small drone hovering near the fence, just outside the property line. It had a tiny camera. She froze. Someone was watching them, tracking them. Recording everything. Emily's heart pounded. The HOA's letters, the strange calls, the footprints, the drone, this was no longer about fines or rules. This was about control. And she realized with a sickening feeling, whatever the HOA was planning, it would happen whether John was home or not. That night, Emily stayed awake, sitting by the window, watching the street. Shadows moved, faint whispers seemed to float on the wind. She didn't sleep. She couldn't. And far away, John continued to serve his country, unaware of the storm building back home. The first signs were small. A letter here, a strange call there. But Emily knew it was only the beginning. Something was coming, a wave of danger that would test her courage, her wits, and everything John had fought for. The sun had barely risen over the desert when John Parker sat alone in a small military tent, scrolling through his phone. He wasn't expecting much, just Emily's usual morning message, a photo of Max chasing his tail in the yard, maybe a quick "good luck today" text. But today, there was something new, an email marked urgent from an unknown address. He frowned. Military networks were strict, and personal emails were rare. John hesitated, then opened it. The words on the screen made his stomach drop. Notice of property transfer, unauthorized claim pending. Immediate attention required. John blinked. He read the message again. At first, he thought it was a scam, some prank. But the official logos, the references to his property address, even a tiny map of his lot, it all looked real. Someone was trying to take his home. His heart raced. No, this can't be real, he muttered under his breath. The desert air felt suddenly heavier, as if the sun itself was pressing down on him. He called Emily immediately. Her voice on the line was shaky. John. I don't know how to explain it. The HOA, they're claiming the yard, part of the driveway, even the garage. And some neighbors, they've already signed over parts of their homes. I tried to stop them. I really tried. John felt numb. He could barely breathe. What? How is that even possible? We've paid everything. We followed all the rules. Emily's voice cracked. It's like they planned it while you were gone. I couldn't fight them alone. John's mind raced. He felt miles away, powerless. For the first time, he realized that the threat was not just letters, not just fines, it was real, dangerous, and legal in a way that almost seemed designed to trap him. He couldn't stand by. He had to know the full story. With shaky hands, he opened the attached map in the email. The lines marked his property, but they were wrong. Sections of his yard, his driveway, even the corner of his living room were now marked as HOA property. John leaned back, staring at the screen in disbelief. The next few days were a blur. He scoured public property records online, trying to find any mistake, any loophole. But what he found made his blood run cold. The HOA had quietly filed paperwork while he was deployed, using a technical loophole to claim parts of multiple homes, including his. Even neighbors who trusted Emily were caught off guard. Some had already signed documents unknowingly giving up their property rights. John felt a surge of anger he had never known before. How could a homeowners association do this? How could they steal property from people serving their country? The injustice burned inside him. But deep down, John knew he had to stay calm. Panic would not help. Only action would. Late one night, he received another email. This one contained photos, real photos of his home. Someone had been inside. Boxes had been moved. The mailbox was gone. Even small decorations, gifts from friends, were missing. It was real. It had happened. And it had happened while he was fighting for his country. John slammed his fist on the table. They can't get away with this, he said through gritted teeth. He started writing a long, detailed report. Screenshots of emails, maps, records, everything. He attached every photo Emily had sent, every document he could find. His fingers shook, but he typed relentlessly. As he worked, he thought back to the early signs, the subtle tension in the neighborhood, the mysterious drone, the strange phone calls Emily had described. Everything was connected. The HOA wasn't just strict, they were organized, deliberate, almost predatory. Then came a call that changed everything. A lawyer, calling on behalf of a group of military families, reached out after seeing John's email. Mr. Parker, the lawyer said, you are not alone. We've seen this before. HOAs are using loopholes to claim property from deployed soldiers. But there's a way to fight it, and the military can intervene in certain cases. John leaned back in his chair, stunned. Relief and determination mixed together. Finally, a solution, a way to fight back. But he knew it wouldn't be simple. The HOA had already moved quickly. They had taken steps to make it seem legal, to make it appear as though he had no rights. The challenge ahead was huge. That night, John couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling of the tent, thinking about his home, Emily, Max, and the neighborhood. Every detail came back: the quiet streets, the neighbors disappearing, the strange packages, and the drone hovering near the yard. It all made sense now. This wasn't just a few letters. This was a systematic takeover. And the HOA had waited until he was gone, thinking no one could stop them. John clenched his fists. "I will get it back," he whispered. The desert wind howled outside, echoing his determination. No matter what it takes. The shocking discovery was only the beginning. The stakes were higher than he ever imagined. This wasn't just about a house, it was about justice, honor, and protecting the lives of those who trusted him to fight for them. And somewhere, far away, the HOA continued its quiet scheme, unaware that John Parker had discovered their plan, and that the battle was about to begin. The sun had barely risen over the military base when John Parker sat hunched over his laptop, the faint hum of generators and distant shouts of training soldiers around him. His hands were steady, but his mind raced. This was no ordinary mission. This was a battle at home, a battlefield he could not see, fought with laws, loopholes, and cunning opponents. Emily's latest email flashed on the screen. She had taken photos of the HOA's latest move, a large "Survey Complete" sign posted at the corner of their yard. According to the HOA, it wasn't just a warning anymore. They were claiming the property legally. Emily's tone was sharp, full of worry, but beneath it, John sensed determination. She was ready to fight, but she needed him. John's first step was to organize every piece of evidence they had. Emails, letters, photos, legal documents, everything. He sent encrypted copies to a military-friendly lawyer, one who specialized in protecting deployed soldiers' rights. The lawyer responded quickly, cautioning John that HOAs often used small technicalities to confuse and intimidate homeowners. But there was one advantage John had: the law protected deployed military personnel. "This is serious," the lawyer said over a secure video call. "They cannot take your property while you are deployed without notice. But we need proof, and fast." John felt a spark of hope. Finally, a plan, a real plan. But executing it from halfway across the world would be complicated. He began drafting a strategy, coordinating with Emily every day. They set up cameras, logged letters, and recorded every interaction with the HOA. Each day brought a new threat: mysterious emails, strange surveyors knocking on neighbors' doors, even phone calls with robotic voices warning of immediate legal consequences. Then came the first breakthrough. Emily discovered that the HOA's president, a man named Gregory Holloway, had a pattern. He targeted deployed soldiers, filing paperwork during their absence to seize property under the guise of compliance. Emily sent John a copy of the public property records. The pattern was clear: Holloway had quietly taken over 3 neighboring properties while the owners were overseas. John's jaw tightened. This was bigger than he imagined. The HOA wasn't just petty, they were predatory and organized, almost criminal. He realized he was not only fighting for his home but for the entire neighborhood. That night, under the dim light of his tent, John made his first daring move. He wrote a formal complaint, citing the Service Members Civil Relief Act, which protected military personnel from losing property during deployment. He sent it to the HOA, the local county office, and the lawyer all at once. But the HOA was faster than he expected. Within hours, Emily reported a new sign posted in front of their driveway. It read, "Pending ownership transfer." She called John in panic. "They're trying to make it official before anything can stop them." John felt a surge of urgency. He could not stand by. Using secure military channels, he began contacting higher authorities, documenting every interaction with the HOA. He even managed to get in touch with a local news reporter who had covered HOA disputes before. The reporter was intrigued, sensing a story of a military family being targeted while serving their country. Days turned into sleepless nights. John juggled military duties, coordination with Emily, and relentless emails. He began uncovering shocking secrets. The HOA had forged signatures, manipulated property surveys, and even pressured neighbors to stay silent. Every discovery added fuel to his determination. He felt the fight was no longer just about his home, it was about justice, fairness, and exposing a dangerous abuse of power. Then came the first act of retaliation. Emily reported that a security camera installed on their property had been smashed. Max barked at shadows, and the once quiet streets now felt tense and threatening. Someone was watching, someone who knew exactly what they were doing. John's mind raced. He had to protect Emily and the property while staying thousands of miles away. He coordinated with a trusted neighbor, Mr. Thompson, to monitor the neighborhood. He set up backup cameras, legal traps, and a constant log of HOA actions. Every small move was planned, calculated, and documented. One night, as John reviewed footage sent by Emily, his blood ran cold. A small drone hovered near their yard again, its camera pointed directly at the house. He paused the video. Someone was not only monitoring them, they were gathering evidence against them, trying to make the HOA's claim look legitimate. John leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. He realized the stakes had escalated. This wasn't a simple property dispute anymore. It was a silent war, a battle of intelligence, courage, and persistence. But John refused to back down. "This ends soon," he muttered. "They may think they have the advantage, but they don't know who they're dealing with." With renewed determination, John coordinated a meeting with the lawyer and a local military liaison who specialized in protecting deployed soldiers' property rights. Plans were drawn, countermeasures prepared, and documents ready. The battle was about to shift from letters and threats to real legal action and military intervention. Emily felt John's determination through every email, every video call. Even from thousands of miles away, his presence gave her courage. She continued documenting, photographing, and recording every HOA move. Together, they were slowly turning the tide. The fight had begun. And as John stared at the map of the neighborhood, marking the homes affected by the HOA's actions, a fire burned inside him. Every stolen mailbox, every threatened yard, every intimidated neighbor, it all added to his resolve. He knew this battle would not be easy. But John Parker had faced impossible missions before. He had faced life-threatening situations, endless obstacles, and powerful opponents. And now, his home, his family, and the entire neighborhood depended on him. The HOA may have started this war, but John Parker had just begun the counterattack. And somewhere in the shadows, Gregory Holloway and his team of HOA operatives had no idea that the tables were about to turn. The quiet streets of the neighborhood were broken by a distant roar, a sound no one expected. Emily stepped onto the porch, heart pounding. In the distance, a convoy of military vehicles appeared, moving with precision and speed. Soldiers in uniform jumped down, their boots hitting the asphalt in a steady rhythm, sending a clear message: this was not a drill. Emily gasped, unsure whether to be terrified or relieved. Then her phone rang. It was John. "They're here," he said, voice calm but firm. "The military is taking control of the situation. Just stay calm and follow instructions." Minutes later, officers approached her, showing official documentation. The order was clear: the HOA's actions were illegal under federal law, and immediate measures were being taken to protect the deployed soldiers' property. Emily felt a wave of relief wash over her. After weeks of fear and uncertainty, help had arrived. But the situation was far from simple. The HOA, led by Gregory Holloway, had anticipated some resistance, but nothing like this. Soldiers were inspecting every property, documenting the damage, and securing homes. Signs posted by the HOA claiming ownership were ripped down. Survey markers were removed. The quiet power the HOA had wielded for months was crumbling in hours. Emily watched as a team of soldiers approached her house. Cameras recorded everything, ensuring there was no question about what happened. One officer turned to her. "We're here to make sure no further illegal claims are made. Everything you own is protected." The sight was surreal. Military vehicles lined the streets. Helicopters hovered faintly in the distance. Neighbors peeked out of windows, unsure whether to run or stay. Some cheered quietly. Others simply watched, stunned. The power balance had shifted dramatically, and the HOA's control was slipping fast. John coordinated remotely, giving orders through secure channels. He instructed soldiers to prioritize homes under immediate threat and to document every irregularity. Every action by the HOA that had seemed legal was now being exposed. Fines, fake documents, and forged signatures all were cataloged for legal action. Inside the Parker house, Emily guided the soldiers through the property. She pointed out areas the HOA had tampered with, boxes moved, fences altered. Each revelation was met with calm professionalism, but underneath, Emily felt a sense of vindication. The nightmare she had endured for weeks was finally being reversed. Meanwhile, the HOA scrambled. Gregory Holloway appeared in front of his own house, trying to speak to the media, to justify his actions. But his words fell flat. The cameras, the soldiers, the official documents all exposed him. His carefully built image of authority crumbled as neighbors stepped forward to testify. Witnesses spoke about letters, threats, and unusual activity over the past months. Every account painted the same picture, an HOA abusing power while deployed soldiers were away. The most shocking moment came when the soldiers accessed the HOA's central records. Files revealed a systematic plan to target military families, falsify compliance notices, and manipulate property lines. Emily could hardly believe it. The HOA's operation was not small, it was organized, methodical, and widespread. As the day wore on, news crews arrived. The story was bigger than just one house, it was a neighborhood, a betrayal, and a national issue. Military personnel stood firm, protecting each home, reclaiming property that had been threatened or stolen. John watched everything unfold through live video calls. From the desert thousands of miles away, he felt an intense mix of relief and determination. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The fight was no longer just legal or digital, it was real, tangible, and unstoppable. Then, Gregory Holloway made a final attempt. He approached the soldiers, trying to negotiate, threaten, and argue. But every move was countered. Orders had been issued from higher authorities. Property claims were frozen. Holloway had underestimated the reach and authority of the military when deployed personnel were involved. Emily felt a surge of triumph as the final signs of HOA control were removed. The neighborhood, once tense and fearful, slowly began to breathe again. Fences were restored, mailboxes returned, and property boundaries officially confirmed. The presence of the military made it impossible for the HOA to continue their illegal activities. But even in victory, the Parker family and the neighbors knew this was not the end. Legal battles would continue, damages would be claimed, and trust would need to be rebuilt. Yet for the first time in weeks, hope replaced fear. The neighborhood was safe, and the homes that had been threatened were secure. John's voice came over the secure line, filled with pride and relief. "You did amazing, Emily. And the neighborhood, we fought together. That's what matters." Emily smiled, tears in her eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you, John." "And without them," she said, gesturing to the soldiers who continued securing the streets. The military operation was a clear message to anyone thinking of exploiting deployed families: justice would not be delayed. The HOA's schemes had been exposed, halted, and documented for prosecution. The streets were quiet again, but the impact of the intervention would resonate for years. As night fell, Emily looked around at the neighborhood. Lights flickered on in houses that had been abandoned or threatened. Neighbors spoke quietly, sharing relief and gratitude. Max barked happily in the yard, chasing shadows under the porch light. Somewhere far away, John finally allowed himself a moment of rest. The fight was far from over, but for now, the military's intervention had turned the tide. The HOA had underestimated the power of truth, law, and honor. And for the first time in months, the Parker family felt safe in their home again. The morning air was thick with tension. Sirens weren't needed, everyone in the neighborhood could feel the battle about to unfold. Emily Parker stood on the front porch, her heart pounding as neighbors quietly emerged from their homes. Some carried signs, others cameras. All of them had been through weeks of fear, intimidation, and uncertainty. Today, they would no longer be silent. John's voice came through the secure video call. "Stay calm, coordinate, and record everything. Don't let them push you around. I'm with you in spirit." Emily nodded, even though John was thousands of miles away. She knew what had to be done. The HOA was desperate now, and desperation made them dangerous. Gregory Holloway had called a meeting at the neighborhood clubhouse, claiming he had the authority to enforce compliance and finalize property transfers. But the residents had grown bold. They had proof, support from the military, and a plan. Holloway stepped onto the clubhouse steps, clipboard in hand, looking for an audience. His usual confidence was shaky. The residents stared back, united. Cameras captured every face. Even neighbors who had been too scared to speak before now held their ground. Emily raised her hand, holding up the letters, photos, and videos documenting the HOA's illegal activities. "We know what you've done," she said, her voice steady. "You tried to steal our homes while our families were away serving the country. But we have proof, and the law is on our side." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Holloway's face turned red, but he tried to regain control. "This is harassment," he shouted. "I am the HOA president. You must follow the rules." A loud beep interrupted him. The military liaison, a stern officer named Captain Reynolds, stepped forward. He held official documents declaring the HOA's actions illegal under federal and state laws. "Effective immediately," he said, "all property disputes involving deployed military personnel are frozen. Any attempts to claim or sell property without legal authority will result in prosecution." The residents murmured in relief, but Holloway's anger flared. He pointed at Emily. "You think this changes anything? I control this neighborhood." Emily stepped forward, her voice unwavering. "No! You tried to intimidate us, manipulate records, and even falsify signatures. The military and the law won't let you do this anymore. We are taking our neighborhood back." A tense silence fell. Then, Mr. Thompson, one of the neighbors who had quietly documented every HOA move, stepped forward with a stack of files. "We have everything," he said. "Emails, letters, photos, witness statements. You won't get away with this." Holloway's expression darkened, but he had underestimated the residents' courage. The showdown had begun. It wasn't violent, but it was charged with energy, fear, and determination. Every resident knew what was at stake: their homes, their security, their dignity. Suddenly, a group of neighbors began marching toward the clubhouse, holding up the evidence for everyone to see. Some shouted questions, others told their stories of intimidation and fear. The camera crews captured it all, broadcasting the HOA's wrongdoing to the wider public. Holloway tried to interrupt, but the military liaison stepped between him and the crowd. "Step back. You have no authority here. Not against these residents. Not while they have legal protection." The tension was electric. Holloway's usual confidence was gone. He turned to leave, but the residents blocked his path. A standoff ensued, a silent battle of willpower. Finally, he realized the fight was over. The proof, the law, and the community's unity were stronger than his intimidation. Emily exhaled, a mix of relief and triumph. "It's over," she whispered to the neighbors. "We won." But the victory wasn't just about legal documents or military intervention. It was about reclaiming their lives. Neighbors began helping each other repair fences, return mailboxes, and restore gardens. Walls of fear that had built up over weeks crumbled in hours. The HOA had underestimated the power of unity, courage, and community spirit. John watched through a live video call, tears in his eyes. "You did it," he said. "You all did it together. That's the real victory." The most satisfying moment came when the community voted to remove Holloway from any position of authority, permanently banning him from holding HOA office. His schemes were exposed publicly, and the threat of criminal charges loomed. The residents celebrated quietly, knowing the battle had been won, but the lessons would remain forever. Emily stood in the middle of the street, looking at the neighbors she had come to rely on. Max barked happily, chasing a leaf down the sidewalk. The sun shone brightly now, a stark contrast to the darkness of fear that had hung over the neighborhood for weeks. Even Holloway's most loyal followers had to step back, realizing that intimidation and greed could not stand against evidence, courage, and law. The showdown was complete, not with violence, but with truth, unity, and determination. That night, Emily sent a final video to John, showing the neighborhood lights glowing warmly, families smiling, and homes restored. "We did it," she said softly. "The neighborhood is safe again." John smiled, feeling pride, relief, and hope. "This is just the beginning," he replied. "But together, we've proven that no one can take what's ours without a fight." The showdown had ended, but the story of courage, justice, and community would be remembered. The HOA had tried to steal more than property, they had tried to steal peace, trust, and security. And now, they had failed. The morning was calm. Birds chirped, and sunlight spilled across the freshly mowed lawns of the Parker neighborhood. It was a peace that felt earned, not given. Emily Parker stepped onto her porch, sipping a cup of coffee, her eyes scanning the street. The chaos of the past week seemed almost unreal now. Mailboxes were restored, fences repaired, and neighbors moved about with smiles instead of cautious glances. John's face appeared on her phone screen. Even thousands of miles away, his presence brought reassurance. "How's it looking over there?" he asked, his voice calm but warm. Emily smiled. "Better than I thought it would ever be. The neighborhood, it feels alive again. People aren't afraid anymore." John nodded, his mind at peace for the first time in months. "Good. Because the fight isn't just about property. It's about what we protect: our families, our homes, our community." While the neighborhood recovered physically, the HOA faced the consequences. Gregory Holloway and his inner circle had been arrested on multiple counts of fraud, intimidation, and illegal property seizure. Legal documents confirmed that every house claimed while deployed soldiers were away had been restored to its rightful owners. The courts ruled decisively, no HOA could exploit deployed military families under the law. Emily watched a news report about the case. The headline flashed on the screen: "Military Families Vindicated, HOA Scandal Exposed." Interviews with neighbors, footage of the military intervention, and photos of restored homes told the story. For the first time, Emily felt a deep sense of closure. But the victory wasn't just legal, it was personal. Neighbors who had once been afraid to speak now came together for a small gathering in the park. Children played freely, and adults shared stories of resilience, courage, and solidarity. The air was filled with laughter, a sound that had been absent for weeks. Emily realized the real battle had been for the soul of the neighborhood, not just its property lines. John was finally home. His arrival was quiet but emotional. Emily ran into his arms, tears streaming down her face. "You're here," she whispered. "We made it through." John hugged her tightly. "We did it together," he said. "Every letter, every call, every action you took, it all mattered." They walked through the neighborhood, hand in hand. Every home told a story of courage: repaired fences, freshly painted doors, restored gardens. Some neighbors waved shyly, some smiled broadly, but all carried a sense of relief. The HOA had underestimated the power of community. In the Parker house, Emily and John finally had a moment alone. They sat in the living room, surrounded by boxes that had been returned, gifts restored, and photos of family and friends. Max curled up at their feet, tired but content. Emily sighed. "It feels like we've been through a war." John nodded. "We have. But the victory is more than just getting our property back. It's about proving that fairness, courage, and unity matter more than greed and intimidation." The legal battles continued, but the HOA members no longer held any power. Fines were canceled, fraudulent claims voided, and Holloway faced years in prison. The neighborhood slowly began to rebuild trust. Residents started organizing meetings, volunteering, and checking in on each other. The sense of community, once fragile, became strong and unshakable. For Emily and John, the fight had changed them. They learned that courage wasn't just about facing enemies in the field or in court, it was about standing up when everything seemed stacked against you. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and betrayal, but had emerged stronger. One evening, as the sun set, Emily and John sat on their porch, watching the neighborhood glow in the golden light. Children played, neighbors laughed, and the quiet hum of life filled the air. John reached for Emily's hand. "We protected more than our home," he said. "We protected the people who trusted us, and we reminded everyone that justice matters." Emily smiled. "And we proved that even in the darkest times, there's hope. Courage, and a little help from the right people, can change everything." The Parker neighborhood was finally at peace, but the story of resilience, bravery, and justice would remain. Letters, drones, and threats had tested them, but unity, law, and courage had prevailed. And far away, those who had tried to exploit the system, like Gregory Holloway, faced the consequences of their greed. The lesson was clear: no one could steal from the brave and the united without paying the price. As night fell, the streetlights flickered on, illuminating lawns, porches, and windows filled with life. Emily leaned against John, feeling the calm, the safety, and the love that had carried them through the storm. Max yawned and stretched, finally at peace. The war was over, the neighborhood restored, and justice had been served. But the real victory was something deeper: the courage to stand together, the determination to fight for what was right, and the knowledge that even the darkest schemes could be defeated with unity and resolve. The Parker family smiled, knowing that their home and their neighborhood was safe. And the story of what they endured, fought for, and ultimately won would be remembered, inspiring courage and justice for anyone who faced impossible odds.